offend me, you can go grab food and come back in. We'll be social out here and start class in here. We're filming this, Kev. Oh, cool. Yeah, man. We gotta save some speeches. Keep on the national speakers. All right. We ready?
Ready.
Okay. So this is a class that I taught at convention in Caesar's Palace in Vegas last March. I also taught it this summer at the #1 volume office in the entire Berkshire Hathaway network. And it's got some Harvard review studies, it's latest, greatest information. All right, we'll try. I thought with time. I think I'm pretty loud. We'll keep going. People will pipe.
I'm listening.
Thank you. All right. So, just a warning at the start. It'll contain opinions that will offend somebody, but as soon as you're offended, give it 5 more minutes, and then the other generation will offend them as well.
Okay.
Okay? So all generations will be offended. If you don't know about me, here's a little bit more about me, and this is my family just a few weeks ago. So I think most of you here know me, so it's enough about that.
Oh, we're cute.
All right, David, let's go next. All right, here's the basis. You got to understand this about communication. I have oftentimes heard phrases like, well, I can't communicate if you won't answer your phone. And text and email does not convey emotion. We're going to dive into that later. But you got to understand, in the history of humans, when cavemen were enlightened, we initially had multiple forms of communication. Okay? They're under 3 umbrellas. There's gestural communication. I cannot talk, but give you gestural forms of communication. There's verbal and spoken communication. And then there's graphic communication. We now speak of graphic communication as text and email, but remember in the ancient days, it was hieroglyphics, okay? And there were reasons that our ancestors used different forms that suited different purposes. In fact, one of the only reasons we have some insight in history is because of graphic communication, not verbal communication. Okay? So remember, when you're frustrated with text and email, history states graphic communication's been here for a long time. All right, David. Let's explore, and you're going to laugh really hard when you see some of these, but all of these videos were within the last 25 years or shorter.
I had one of those.
I'll work on sound for you. You get the gist of it.
Radio set.
That's real, that's not a spoof. Okay, do you recognize the lady on the left?
Yeah. Katie.
Katie Couric. Listen to what she says about the internet.
If you're one of them, you can now flip the future with nothing more than a modem, a phone line, a few dollars a month. That little mark with the A and then the ring around it? See, that's what I said. Katie said she thought it was a bomb.
Yeah.
Well, I've never heard it said. I know I see the mark, but never heard it said. And then it sounded stupid when I said it. While it's at NBC.
Just what is this main artery of the information superhighway?
Every business, no matter how large, no matter how small, will be on the internet in the year 2000.
is have the primary way that people will look up information. It will replace the yellow pages as we know it today.
Are a lot of people just getting onto the internet because they feel that they have to get on the playing field, so to speak?
But it's very hip to be on the internet right now. NBC, GE, com. I mean,
What Allison should know,
what is internet anyway?
Internet is that massive computer network, the one that's becoming really big now.
What do you mean? That's big. How does one? What do you write to it like mail?
No, a lot of people use it to communicate. I guess they can communicate with NBC writers and producers. Allison, can you explain what internet is?
No,
Oh,
she
wow.
can't say anything in 10 seconds.
I'm afraid that if I subscribed to something like internet, you would really be hooked. I would get hooked and I would never, spend time with my family. Do you know the problem, that these are people that you don't really know? I mean, everybody's, signing on and having these conversations and whining together or drinking together or whatever. With people that, I don't know.
It is group therapy of the 90s.
Well, as I mentioned, I have no desire to be a part of the internet because I feel like I'm so inundated with information all the time that I don't want more. Do you ever feel like it's just constant bombardment?
I guess the thing that was most is how you notice it. At least when you're home with the phone rings, you have the option of not answering. On the internet, people can send you messages all the time, and you don't even really hear from them.
Wow.
All right, we got a few others, but I'm going to jump forward. So we can laugh at how hilarious it is looking backwards. But what we humans are awful at is projecting what it's going to look like moving forward. Okay? That seems archaic and funny now, but everything we just watched was filmed in the last 25 years or less. And here we have one of our trusted news sources saying, well, I would never get on the internet. What is that? It's just silly. It's a platform for people to communicate. Well, why wouldn't I just have a conversation with folks? Pick up the phone and call them, talk to them face to face. Okay? Well, we all know how dead wrong the media was on that one at the time. Second question is, what do you do? And what does the future for our industry, for realtors, look like? All right, let me ask a few questions that 10 years ago, our industry would have thought these questions were insane and these things would never happen. Who's contracted a house for a buyer without the buyer ever seeing it live first? Okay, there's only 20 of us in here, and a fourth of the room has done that. Okay, 10 years ago, who's been in it 10 years or more? Okay, no one, if you asked any realtor around the nation 15 years ago, they never would say that this would happen. Okay, how about this one? Who's done a transaction without ever meeting in person or talking live on the phone to the agent on the other side? Okay? So 20% of the room. Okay? I'm a bit older than you might think I am, and I've been licensed for a long enough time that I actually still remember the Codex book. And for you to get access to the inventory, you had to do one of two things. Have the book or talk to the listing agent, right? And in fact, I would say when I first got in the industry, I was still presenting offers on behalf of my buyers in person live to the listing agent about a fourth of the time. We were using fax machines, but I'd often drive the offer over to the agent's office and present it. Okay? How drastically fast that has changed. Now you can see where I'm going. We can talk about being set in the old ways and wishing it went back, but that's about as laughable as it would be to talk to Katie Couric about the internet right now. It's changed. We got to keep up with the times. Okay? Who's listed a property prior to ever walking through it? Right? Okay, again, about a fourth of the room has done that. Well, consumers 10 years ago would argue, well, isn't that your job? If you're going to list my house, you better go through it at least. Okay? Let's propose a future question. If a third of the room or a fourth of the room is already saying yes to this, what does the future of digitally checking out properties look like? You may still have to go see it live just to make your client feel good, but seeing it virtually may be just as much up to snuff as you physically walking through the property. In fact, it might be better for you as an agent. So, a little glance at what we've already morphed into in the last decade. And if you think the last decade went fast, industry experts are saying, wait for the next 3 years, the next 5 years. What do future showings look like? Part of the reason we designed our space this way. We are going to start doing virtual Instagram ads for virtual tours for our clients. Basically saying, yeah, we know. You look on Zillow and find the house yourself. You don't need a realtor. Well, guess what? Come surf with us with virtual reality goggles on and watch how much more capable my team is at surfing than you are. Or go ahead and spend 100 hours in your underwear at 11 at night surfing the web for a new house. Good luck. Okay? We still have a value proposition because of our expertise in the future, but it's going to be a little bit different of a sales pitch. Okay, let's explore some data. This is, you know me and data.
Yeah.
I try to find the best data, and I try to find the most current data, and this is out of Harvard Review, and it's going to blow your mind. And this is real. Okay? Here's something I've often heard. Now remember, this is the part where I gave disclaimer. All generations are going to be offended. So if you're in a certain generation, you're offended, give me a second, I'll offend another generation. Okay? Boomers often say, my father-in-law says this to me all the time, answer your phone. I can't convey emotion in writing. I've said to him a few times in the past couple of years, really, we as humans can't convey emotion in writing? Have you ever read a book? Right? I mean, authors are pretty good at conveying emotion in writing. You turn them into movies. Okay? Data out of Harvard Review. End of 2018,
Wow.
less than 5% of people in the United States answer the phone on an initial phone call. That's shocking.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
98% of text messages are read within 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean somebody's going to reply, but the way our software on our phones are programmed, you are primed to at least open that text. Why? You want to make, even if it's a solicitation, the red box or the little icon disappear.
Yeah.
You want to show that it's been read. It's almost easier for you to open it and then go back than it is to swipe and delete it. Okay? So, as of right now, and this is always changing, but as of right now, the latest and greatest is people aren't going to answer the phone, and you at least have less than a half a second to grab their attention if you send a text. They are going to see it. Okay? 82% of emails are never opened now.
Shocking.
If we're standing here 5 years ago and I was teaching the latest, greatest on soliciting your clientele, we probably would have talked about an email drip system or a campaign, right? Now, don't take any cues from me yet. I'm not telling you what to do in your business quite yet, but I'm giving you the information. I'm telling you that it's constantly changing, and this is the latest. Another thing I often hear, I don't have time to talk this out, so answer your phone so I can talk at you. There's a difference between talking at you and talking to you. And hyper salespeople who've memorized scripting really want to talk at you. And if you do that, there's a certain entire group of generational people that will blackball you and never even give you the opportunity for you to talk at them. Okay? The average person spends 55 minutes a day texting. Again, this is out of Harvard Review, over 50,000 people in this poll. Consumers respond to text 60 times faster than email. Again, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, this would have been different. Why is that happening? Take a minute in your mind to think, why has this changed so rapidly? Well, we get jaded. Remember, the umbrellas of the forms of communication that have existed since cavemen have not really changed. You've got gestural, you've got verbal, and you've got text or written communication. But the tech we use to access those forms of communication is constantly changing. And the way we respond and receive those texts is changing. And here's the secret. As soon as we get really jaded on one, because the form gets convoluted with sales folk and spam and solicitation and disruption, and it's annoying, then we as a society start morphing to a new one. And by the end of this, I'll tell you some of the ones that I think are going to be coming in the future. The average person sends and receives 94 text messages a day. Okay? All right, boomers, I don't have time to type this out, so let me talk at you. Next slide. This is the last data point, and then we'll get into some to-dos here. Really? You don't have time to type it out. Now, let me speak a little bit facetiously about my own business. I have created a name for myself in this market for being either super nice when you are the agent on the other side of the transaction, you love me, or you hate me. There's not really an in-between. And you love me if you're communicating in my style and fashion, and you despise me if you're not. Now, I know that sounds a little bit of arrogant, but I have sent these graphics to agents on the other side of a transaction that I've dealt with who will say, call, 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 and after 5 days they won't get me. I can get your phone. What do you need? Describe it in 30 words or less, and I will get back to you. Okay? I'm not, again, on the offense thing, wait till the end before you make conclusions on when we use the phones. I'm not saying you can't use it. But this study was done by IBM, okay, 2018. Over 5 million people went into this study. Fastest typing speed, 216 words a minute. Average typing speed, 44 words a minute. Average computer typist, 41 words a minute. Fastest English language typist, 216. Average adult reading speed, 270 words a minute. Highest speed using a stenograph, 360. World's fastest speaker, 637 words a minute. Let me just boil this down for you and tell you what it really means. You can, if you're just average and good at conveying directly what you need to say, type it out, receive it back, and read it just as fast as you can talk it. And my argument is going to be you actually talk it a million times slower than you can type it and read it. Why? Especially us as sales folks. When we get going, we like to hear ourselves talk. And what this doesn't calculate is when you're in a convo, you've got to receive feedback from the other party you're conversing with. This is why 20 years ago, Harvard did a massive study on episodes of groupthink. You get 5 red personality CEOs in a room and tell them to talk about a subject and make some conclusions, you're probably never going to get anywhere, and you're going to have a massive episode of groupthink. Because all 5 of them think they're dominant, all 5 want to get their agenda across, and all 5 are not interested in hearing what the other party has to say. Right? So, as I'm painting this picture with data, next slide, David. As I'm painting it with data, what we're really getting at here, and I'm going to give you the punchline to this presentation right now because I can see a few people going, where are you going with this, Jake? As sales folk, the latest and greatest, and unfortunately, what is going to continue to come at us is we have got to become what I call chameleons. You've got to be able to read who you are going to communicate with really quickly, profile them, and make some conclusions on the best form to communicate with that person and the scenario that's approaching you. I'll give you examples on how to do that. So you've got to be really good at all forms. You got to be good at the phone. You got to be good at text. You got to be good at email. You got to pick up on social. You got to use the new CRM tool and do it all decent and decide what's best for the scenario you're involved in and what fits your personality. All right, some cautions. If you are an expert, and this guy's an expert right here at verbal communication, I can attest to that. in my office next to him
Yeah.
for 5 years. I'm not joking. He is an expert at phone communication.
However, I'm not great at technology.
It's okay. It's okay. Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, I mean that with sincerity. He's mastered it. Okay? And to let you know a little secret, if you're a similar age demographic as Kevin Jensen and you've made a living in sales, I'm a betting man. I'll give you a 90% chance that you're pretty darn good at the phone. Okay? Why? That was by far and away the master form of communication in sales through the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. Okay? You guys were super cool when you were rolling in your Honda Accord with a brick phone and were the first to go wireless. Okay?
I even have Honda Accord.
Yeah, I know. That was the real 80s realtor phone. Okay, so, you know, we know this, and high five. I'm going to show you at the end. You should pick the form to master that best suits your personality style. That's step one. Okay, but you've got to be a chameleon and adapt to the others in this day and age. So some cautions on verbal communication, live or on the phone. Here's those cautions. You must know that gestural and verbal communication requires pauses and conversing in the conversation. What are the pitfalls that can be experienced? A lot of salespeople, especially newbies, and you've all seen this in the industry, how many phone calls have you gotten on with a newer agent that's just so hyped up to finally get you on the phone that all they want to do is talk at you, not listen, do no discovery, and just spew their agenda upon you? Right? Okay? We're often so thinking about what we want to say next, you're forcing, if you push a millennial into a corner like this, you are forcing them to respond to questions without having an opportunity to think about how they want to answer. There's no pause. And if you got a boomer standing here on the phone with a really firm agenda, I want you to lower the price on your listing, and you've got, I'm not a millennial, so you got the millennial client over here, and you chose the phone, and you have a Mike Ferry script you're about to spew at them to get them to lower price. If I'm the millennial consumer, I will cancel my listing agreement. I never want to talk to you again. Okay? Because you're forcing me to respond before I've had an opportunity to think about lowering my price. That generation, we're used to being able to Google it first, get the data, think about it. So I prefer that my agent send me all that, then maybe shoot me a text or give me a call and say, hey, just review that data. What do you think? We should probably lower the price to $15,000. Okay? Forced verbal communication leads to a lot of misunderstanding and assumptions. Now, conversely, I get from boomers all the time. Well, text leads to, you know, misunderstanding assumptions. I'm like, well, that's because you don't know how to do it.
Well,
If you could communicate directly in 100 words or less and just ask me your question, I could respond. Some questions warrant a conversation. Some questions can be directly answered in 10 words or less. Okay? All right. Who has had a scenario with somebody under the age of 35, maybe it's a client of yours or your own child, who you have engaged in what you thought was going to be a positive conversation, but somehow the other party just started getting agitated or angry. And you thought, there's absolutely no reason for you to be agitated or angry. You can't understand why they are. Okay? This is another caution of verbal communication. That's backing somebody into a corner and talking at them. This is stone cold millennials. So now it's time to offend millennials. Has anyone else experienced in here that you can, in person or on the phone, get most millennials to commit to almost anything? We're going to go to St. George this weekend and go golfing. Are you in? Do you have anything? Oh, yeah, sure, I'm in. But they're famous for being what? Flaky. Right? And we get this all the time. There's articles about that generation being super, super flaky. I'm going to argue they're not flaky. Actually, at a more very in-depth level, boomers are using pressure and sales tactics and tone to pressure them to do something. And to get out of the scenario, millennials have learned the quickest way to do so is just say, yep, I'm in, I'll do it, okay, later. And then they're going to avoid the crap out of you. Okay? So if you just got a lead and you Google the person, sweet, young new tech executive moving to Salt Lake City. And my favorite client just referred them to me. I'm telling you, if that person's under the age of 35 and you call them 5 times in the first week, like Mike Ferry tells you to do so, you've already lost them as a client. They never answer your call. They're not going to return your voicemail for any tactic. Okay? You can inadvertently create a worse situation by communicating at somebody, and dominating personalities usually win verbal communication. Okay? Now that's not necessarily a bad thing. That could be a good or bad thing depending on the scenario you are in. If you're good at verbal communication and it's a scenario you need to win, okay, you may want to choose verbal communication for that scenario. If you are not good at it and you don't want to be pressured, you are going to avoid that scenario like the plague. Okay? All right. A few things about graphic communication. What's the major difference? Graphic allows you to stop, collaborate, and listen. All right, next, David. All right. So, as of 2019, who has won the battle? We've got a boxing match going on. All right. There's not a conclusion at who's won the battle, but let me give you a scenario to think about. We all know cell phone plans. Okay? For decades, how were you charged on your cell phone plan?
Minutes.
By minutes. When did that change in the masses? 8 to 10 years ago. Now, how are you charged? Data. Okay? Now, if that doesn't tell you what communication factors have won the battle, it's not a generational thing. Okay? It's a use of best forms thing. And we as a society around the globe, this is not United States agnostic, we as a society came to the conclusion 8 to 10 years ago that data was being used more than minutes, and thus phone companies don't care about your minutes usage anymore. They're going to charge you on your data usage. Again, no conclusions, just know that. All right. So with all this craziness, how do you choose what to use and when? There's no definite answer. The real goal is for salespeople to become experts at deciding what type of communication is best suited for the scenario they're in, and to be able to use a combination of all this. So now we're going to spend the rest of the class with me giving you some scenarios and examples so I can plant seeds about how in my business I have used which form for what scenario, and give you some funny stories on when those scenarios went really bad.
I have a question.
Yes.
It seems to me it would be appropriate when you first meet someone to actually ask them, what's the best way to reach you? By phone, by text, or email?
Yep. And you're spot on, and I'll take it one level above where you just took it.
Okay.
Because of your preconceived notions and how you grew up and how you sold when you first started, you just said to me, well, when you first are talking to someone, you should say, how do you want to communicate? I'm going to say perfect with one exception. You may never talk to them first. Right?
Yeah.
So, and here's the golden rule. You nailed it on the head. David, next slide.
But you could text them now.
Go one more forward and then come back to this. Rule number 1, not to break. When someone approaches you first, respond to them with the same type of communication they use to initiate conversation with you. Okay? So that was perfect. You said that. I didn't pay you to. Right? But if you are in the power seat, okay, and let's say you got a referral, and I get this often. I always say when someone's referring me out, yeah, if you could give me their contact information, I'll reach out to them. Sometimes the referring party says back to me, well, I'll just tell my buddy to call you or to reach out to you. You got a 50-50 there of that happening, or worse. But on occasion, when a new consumer has solicited me first to possibly help them with something, and usually it's not, hey, will you be my agent? It's usually like, oh, I already made an offer over the weekend, and so said I should check with you, and you're really good at data and values. I mean, I don't really need an agent, but can you just let me know if I'm in the mix on the price of this house, right? Well, that is my opportunity to win business. If that came in the form of an email, I reply with an email. If that came in the form of a text, I reply with a text. If that person left me a voicemail, I call them back. Okay? Go back one, David. So, before we jump into those scenarios, here's kind of a brief overview on what we as a society have decided the different forms fit. And you can read that, so I'm not going to go through it. But I'm going to tell you a bit of the difference for those that may not know why you would use text or email. You all know what text is versus email, but we have a hard time deciphering when to use what. And here's my best practice. Okay? Text is for speed, responsiveness, but you gotta be witty and short and precise. And you can convey emotion, you can convey phenomenal emotion, and the world of tech has been helping us. Every day it's getting better, and there's awesome GIFs and emojis and all these things you can use to convey the tone that you meant to convey. So you can become an expert at that. The difference between that and email is more professional, is more time-stamped, is more recognized by the law to be permissible in court. And I love email, especially when I'm communicating with more than one person, because I can get everyone on the same page, and I can make the convo much more colorful by adding attachments, hyperlinks, spreadsheets, videos, this data graph. Here's a link to this presentation. I've been ridiculed when I have done business with agents on the other side, again, for not picking up the phone. And oftentimes a response when they have questions about my listing, when they finally do get me on the phone, I will politely kind of say, can't you read? Because if you have MLS access, I'm driving right now, and you finally got me after 5 phone calls. And by the way, you disrupted me. I was in the middle of listening to a TED Talk. And I don't memorize all my listings. Sorry, but guess what the best is the best form of that type of communication these days? Okay? Voicemail, or like, I don't know, you have a million apps and access to the MLS if you're a licensed agent, and I will swallow my words very quickly if the agent on the other end in this conversation says, yeah, Jake, I already read all the MLS information. What wasn't in there is I can't tell on that back deck really how big is it, how deep is it. Okay, great. Now you just skyrocketed up to an agent I love because you thoroughly read the MLS information and asked me a question that you couldn't read. Guess how often that happens? Like, never. Okay, 99% of phone calls that my business partner Spencer is on, and I've officed with him for 17 years, so trust me, I know this. 99% of them are calls on all our listings, and they're stuff that somebody could have taken 90 seconds and read. Okay? And I know that sounds extremely harsh because the business used to not be like this. But if you're applying those habits more and more, you're going to create a bad name for yourself in the professional industry because agents on the other side are going, come on. Do you really not know how to open the MLS and read? Okay.
Jake,
Yep.
I think the reason you're hearing more of that is because people they actually want to speak to a person. They can read it, and they may not understand it.
Oh, absolutely. And people love to, if you've spent decades being predisposed to needing to get a voice on the other end of the line, or somebody in person to confirm something for you. Unfortunately, in our society, that's diminishing. And we're in a day and age where an entire generation coming into the business field has decided to trust this source that they can find themselves and read on more than I'm going to call my doctor and see what he has to say. Now, in our industry, people do what you just said all the time. I can hold a listing agent. But apply this to the medical field for a second. Can you ring up your doctor on his cell anytime you want?
You never could.
You never can, and never could. Right? So millennials in the doctor field now, if they have an ailment, you best be sure they Googled it first, they read about it, they Googled their symptoms, they went on WebMD, blah, 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 far before they got in the phone book and tried to call a doctor that specializes in that specificity, right? All right, let's get into some scenarios. So I was involved, me and some partners, we bought a mobile home manufacturing facility in Joplin, Missouri a year ago. And it's this big building, and we have business partners out there that are running it. And this whole thing boiled into a lawsuit with our partners in Missouri. And the gentleman that runs the factory for us is famous at adopting new technology. Hear me out on this. Adopting new technology, but still applying his old habits to that technology. Here's the scenario. We were engaged in this lawsuit, and we were working on a settlement, and he was demanding that we all partners get on a phone call. And us four here in Utah were saying, absolutely not. You are a red personality, you are dominant, you are 58 years old, you have made a living on the phone, and you don't let anyone else talk, and you pressure the crap out of it. So he goes, well, download Amazon Chime, which is a video conferencing app, and we'll all get on that and talk. And I was like, please, no. And I just emailed our attorney. I'm like, tell David we will not take anything live, gestural, phone from him, put it in writing, send it to us. We'll decide if we'll do it or not. One thing led to another, and we scheduled a brief conference call, on Friday afternoon at 4 p.m. 6 months ago. Oh, my wife was out of town. So I've got all three of my kids. It's Friday. I'm driving home, downloading this dang video app. I get on. So he's using the latest in tech to communicate, right? And I'm not going to have David pull this up, but these are the actual notes and some of the negotiations with the attorneys. Long story short, that video conference went 3 hours and 12 minutes. Okay? I set my phone in my kitchen and was just like, and kept walking out of the scene. Like, this is totally irrelevant. Okay? And the Missouri party, mainly one gentleman, talked at us for 3 hours and 10 minutes of that call. Okay? And maybe 30 words were said by the Utah party at random parts, like, yeah. All right. By the following Monday, I received a forwarded email chain from his attorney, and they didn't delete this or forgot, but it was a synopsis from this Missouri gentleman describing how well the video conference went. And it was extremely colorful, and he thought he just did a phenomenal job and had settled our negotiations right there. Okay? In his mind, he used the latest tech, he got us young guys on the phone, he spewed his agenda upon us, and we were just like, yeah, bro, we knew you were going to do this. Go ahead and talk. My kids are being nuts. I didn't hear anything you said. Later. So that's how well merging and using new tech works when you're not using it for the appropriate situation and you're using it in a way where you don't know your own skill set first. Okay? Scenario 2. This is a 10-year joking battle I have going on with my father-in-law, who's also my backyard neighbor. Okay? Now, we're buddies. We share some sports cars together. Okay, so everything's good. But let me talk a little facetiously so I paint a good picture. There is nobody more in the state of Utah that loves the phone than my father-in-law. The phone. He's a chiropractor. A little bit of an ambulance chaser, so he's really got to solicit his clientele to get a hold of them a lot. And he's really good at it. And in the 80s and early 90s, he was the coolest guy in town, convertible M3. He lives right over here at Willow Creek. He's always cruising on 215 in his drop top, even in the winter. And he's on the phone. Bluetooth in all the time, Bluetooth in his car, loves it. Here's a typical conversation between me and my father. Friday afternoon. He's called 7 times, by the way, and I've never answered. So finally, Friday afternoon, I'm in a state where I could be disrupted a little. I'm like, I should answer Jimbo's call. Finally, I answer, hey, buddy, what are you doing tomorrow? I say, what, Saturday? Yeah, what you got going on? Well, why? No, nothing. I'm just seeing what you got going on. Maybe go for a convertible ride. Just Mike, well, I don't really have anything. I've got a meeting at 11. Other than that, I'm pretty open. Okay, can you help me move the couch at 4 o'clock? Right? Now, he could text, and he's been calling me since Monday. On Monday, he could have just texted, Jake, can you help me move a couch on Saturday, whatever time works for you or whatever? And we're homies. I would text back, sure. How about 2 o'clock or whatever? But instead, he'll spend the entire week soliciting me. Why? His style, he knows he's getting the phone. He wants to pressure me into it. And we have 10 years going on where I know he doesn't call me unless he needs something from me. Okay? So I, by nature, am going to avoid him calling me, never answer the phone, and oftentimes just text back, what do you need? And he does this more than anyone I've ever met. Call me. That's all he'll text. He calls me, and then I don't answer, and if any of you have heard my voicemail, it basically says, you can't convey what you need, shoot me a text, then don't keep calling me. And Cindy, you've heard it, right? And I have, and I'm counting, I have a tracker on some of this stuff because I do this public speaking around the nation. So I'm getting more and more data on this. He's sent me over, at this point, 100 call me texts.
Oh my gosh, that's the worst you can ever send.
That is the worst.
Okay? So, the last slide will come to conclusions of how to use what. Keep that story in your mind. All right, 3.
Jay, you need to teach him how to
It's, okay.
Jay,
Yes.
I feel really bad, but I had a good friend say that to me one time.
Yeah.
We were talking, and she said, fine, she said, hey, I gotta go, what do you need? And I said, oh, I'm just calling. She goes, no, you only call when you need something. And it really hurt my feelings, but I think with my generation, I think you're right on the money. It's probably true.
Yeah. And this is why, I mean, you got to recognize my tone. You all know me, so I can be a little more facetious with this group. I tone this down a little when I'm speaking in Vegas, but yeah, the point is we have to have a direct conversation about this stuff. Because on an upper level, this is not specific to real estate. The business world is at odds right now. Why? For decades, it doesn't matter if it was right, wrong, or best fit, boomers won the communication battle because they were in power. Okay? But now you got tons of millennials knocking on the hills of all these doors, and there are full industries that now have won the battle against the way boomers want to do business. Now it's coming to ours, but we're old school. This battle was won in the tech industry in Palo Alto like 10 years ago. Okay? If you were, suit wearing, love the phone, always doing sales, boomer in Palo Alto 10 years ago, and that's all you used, you didn't adapt, you're out of the tech industry. We already know this. So it's best to have an honest conversation about it. This happens to me all the time still, at least once a week, if not more. I write a very eloquent email. Hyperlinks, spreadsheets, data, information, everything you would want to know. If you have any question, you can just read, it's in there. And at the end, I film a video of me talking about the data and information if you want to fast track it. Okay? What does our society do a lot still? They don't read any of it. You spend all this time putting it together, and then finally when you can connect on the phone or in person, it's very apparent to you who wrote the email that the other party is just opening it or just reading it for the first time. And I will often sit on the phone while they kind of read it back to me. And these guys know this. I've been famous for saying 10 minutes into that call, hold on. Yeah, I know what I said. You're reading it back to me. I'll hang up now. You understand the information. and then get back to me, and then we're at an even level of understanding and can have a conversation about what to do next. Okay? Choose your type for the scenario in. I don't ever do that to my clients. I kiss my clients' butts and reply how they want me to reply. But I do that all the time to agents on the other side of transactions, especially complicated deals. I've done some large commercial transactions, subdivision and project development, and I have sent eloquent emails that are this long, that have everything that needs to be known, and then said to the other party, look, you got to get up to snuff before we can even have this convo. Don't call me and start trying to negotiate before you understand what's really going on. Okay? All right, last scenario. Let's take the classic agent inspection report. You represent a buyer. Has anyone in the history of their careers done an inspection and not had the client somewhat freak out? Like, those things are predisposed and written in a way that it's a guaranteed freak out by the client. Okay? And we do all these things to try to prep them. It's not scary. I see these all the time. It's 36 pages. There's a summary at the end. Don't stress it. I'll handle everything. We go there, whatever. That PDF comes, and darn those inspectors when they send it to the client first and not you, and Friday night at 9 o'clock, the client's freaking out. They always want to cancel. House is falling down. The seller's not going to repair anything. Okay? So here's a scenario where client's doing this, we're always doing this, and we should be smarter as salesfolk. With all the tech at our availability, there are ways to use communication to diffuse all this before they just see it emailed over to them and this happens. Okay? All right, David. So, here is really what steps I have deciphered, because this is different for everyone in this room. Here's the root of the material. What you want to do is, above all, know yourself. Okay? So, we can try to demographically, age, and gender profile you real quick. And I could probably make some preconceived ideas at the style I think you're going to be best at, or the habits you've developed. I am not saying in this presentation that you shouldn't use those habits. I'm saying know first who you are and what your skill set is. And we're going to build on that. Okay? And it's likely that your sphere of influence, which is really the golden ticket to selling more real estate, having real but not fake relationships with that sphere. Chances are the sphere that's stuck with you for a long time communicates like you do. Okay? So step one, do a little exploratory work and maybe take some time to write down who you are and how you know you communicate and what your skill sets are. And if you're having trouble doing this, jump to step 3, take the Myers-Briggs test. Anyone know what Myers-Briggs is? No. Okay. It's personality profile testing. I've found it to be the cleanest, simplest, easiest one. There are more complicated formats, but Myers-Briggs has 4 colors, and they're easy to memorize. You're red, yellow, blue, or white. Okay?
Is that online?
Yep.
Oh.
Yep. Just Myers-Briggs. Google it. There's free.
Is that the same as the color code or no?
Yep. That's the color code testing. Yep. So, they have the simple 4-color code, or they have a 16-dot matrix alphabetical system. Okay? Take whatever. Do this on your own time. They're free. Just Google it. And when you do that testing, it will tell you your personality style. And communication tools fit personality styles. So know yourself, take the test. The next thing you got to do is explore tools that are available. Now here's the cool thing about being at one of the top brokerages, like you experienced this morning. You don't got to spend hours or days like constantly staying up on the latest and greatest. If you're not phenomenal at all the other things the phone can do, you don't need the latest iPhone. None of that matters. You don't have to have the latest tech. What you got to do is choose the ones that are going to foster your personality style and habits. Okay, that's the secret sauce. And then this is where most people fail. Once you kind of deciphered who you are and what tools are at your disposal, and all of us inadvertently know what we are and aren't going to use. Come on. At this age, you probably know you're not going to adapt to maybe some brand new tech. Like, anyone heard of Marco Polo? A video conferencing and communication app where you just kind of go back and forth. Like, why would I do that? Why wouldn't I just film a video of myself and text it to my wife? Well, I use Marco Polo because it allows us to have a live video conversation, but with one difference. I don't interrupt her, she doesn't interrupt me, we're both busy during the day, and she can talk to me when she's leaving the gym this morning.
3,000 miles, that kind of.
Okay, that was filmed at 7:17. I haven't replied yet because I've been super busy. When I have a second, I can reply. How is that different than a text? How is that different than me texting her a video of myself? Well, the app just makes it super easy for her to film that and say something, and for me to reply like this, and just say,
We know how far you have to go.
hey, just saw your Marco. I'm teaching a class to all these folks.
I'm jealous, you're at the gym.
And teaching them how tech works. Okay, done. She just got that. Okay, one button. One button.
Jay?
Yep.
Just a personal note on that. Like, I've been able to connect with my daughter using Marco Polo, so you have to figure out what it is. Like, yeah, the new tech doesn't necessarily have to be something we have to like fight against. It can be really fun to embrace.
Right.
Way to stay in touch.
Well, and that's a great example. That's key right there. I mean, that's in a family, and you just nailed my conclusion. You nailed the one slide, you nailed the next one. Because the summary here, go to that last one, David, is this. And I gave this class yesterday in Park City, and I went home, and I went, dang it, I'm very critical to myself. On a scale of 1 to 10, I was like an 8 yesterday in Park City. And so I came in all jazzed this morning. I rewrote this last 2 slides, and this is what I voice texted myself when I was driving in here. Really, the conclusion is this, and your example with your daughter nails this. And trust me, I've traveled the nation and seen what like the top young producers in the entire Berkshire Hathaway network do in their businesses. Hey, Dallas is on Rethink Council. I ran the Rethink Council for 3 years. Top 20 producers under the age of 35 in the Berkshire network. I've seen their offices. I know what they do in their businesses. And I could give all that to you. The reality is, no one in this room is going to take all those tools and use them. Forget about it. We as agents stress ourselves out. Oh, now everyone's doing this. I got to be awesome at the CRM or blah, 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 blah. And we don't even sell any real estate. So above all that, this is what you're trying to accomplish in sales. Once you master a natural style that fits your personality, not only will you have better communication, but better communication leads to stronger relationships and increases your sphere of influence, which in turn leads to more referrals. But more importantly, referrals and getting money and closing deals, it helps you have a full life with real relationships. And it helped him connect to his daughter and communicate better. Okay? That's the key. We've been trying to communicate as human beings since cavemen were enlightened. And the exact same forms have existed since then. We're just using new tech to foster them. So know yourself and create habits around the form that's going to fit you and your sphere the best. And do it in a genuine fashion, because if you're genuine about it, you're going to better your relationships, and everything else falls into place after that. Hope it helps. Thanks for coming.
Hey, Jay, I have a question right here.
Oh, question? Yeah, sure, I'll let her know. Yeah.
Okay, understanding.
Okay, what do we?
How do I do that via text or what?
Yeah, so if,
Because there's a lot of pushback.
so if you're the listing agent and you want to know about the buyer's agent's
Well, I mean, but you're in charge. So there's only two of us.
Not today. I thought I was there last night till 10.
That's my favorite time of year.
Yeah, I'm trying to reverse it. I just can't. I go at night.
My wife's like, we need for all the mornings. I'm like, I just can't. I can't keep myself from getting there.
So, you don't just gotta work.
Oh yeah. Let's probably Dezo. Oh, he's gone. He's gone. It's gone.
Cindy, will you remind me?